I have a confession to make. I really want the Floowandereeze deck to be good. They're one of the decks I've been looking forwards to the most ever since their reveal, and why wouldn't I? I mean, just look at them. Not to reinforce the stereotype of women only playing cute decks like Melfies or Fluffles, I mean, I also play a Zombie World deck, and they're not cute, right? Oh, wait. But this is an archetype telling the story of an Arctic tern's migration throughout the globe, meeting other cute birds along the way. I mean, what's not to like? Well, except maybe their name. I really did not expect them to localize it quite so literally. It's quite a mouthful, so I'd like to propose Fluas as their shorthand name. Also, unlike some other cute archetypes, they're not completely useless. Sorry Ghost Trick fans, I hope your new support helps you. In fact, this archetype's reveal sent waves through the Yu-Gi-Oh community when it was first revealed. The idea of an archetype that creates a huge chain of normal summons, searching everything it needs while also chain blocking certain effects, only to end on a few powerful floodgates, was already scary enough. And then, you realise that they also just get to play on your opponent's turn. I know that people like throwing that phrase around a lot, but this archetype really takes it to the next level, just getting to do everything they did on your turn all over again, sometimes with added bonuses. So of course, then there was the backlash of people getting annoyed about these small birds being everywhere, and insisting that they weren't actually that good, because they lose to some interruption, notably certain hand traps. While that's a bit of an oversimplification, and becomes even less true next set when we get some truly broken support, it's true that it's a bit of a weakness, which is why we're building this deck to counter its weakness as much as possible by including some useful tech cards. Now a while ago, I made a video about the good and bad cards that you can run in this deck, or that you should avoid. You should give that video a watch when you're done with this, because I still stand by most of what I said. The only thing I'd say that was a bit wrong is what I said about the barrier statue, which I think you should run at 1 actually, since certain hands do allow it on top of your usual turn's goal. So what is it that you're going for in this version of the deck? Well, an ideal hand will have 2 things in it, a Robina, or a way to get to it, and then an Ecclesia, or again, a way to get to it. This will end on an M-Pen, negating attack position monsters, an Ecclesia that sets Dogmatika Punishment for some destruction effects, and a set Dreaming Town that allows you to tribute summon a Riser on your opponent's turn for some powerful disruption. All this being backed up by cards to make their turns more consistent with draw power or effect dodging cards, and you've got yourself a powerful deck. Also, thanks to Sword Souls for biting the bullet of having way too many high rarity cards, it shouldn't even be too expensive for a deck with a real shot at being a meta contender, with their Field Spell, Nadir Servant and Riser being their most expensive cards. So let's have a look at it, shall we? First off, let's start with the Flua monsters themselves. You run 3 Robina, 3 Eaglin, 2 Stritch, 1 Tokan, and 1 M-Pen. Robina is your best and kind of only real starter in the deck. On summon, it searches another low-level winged beast monster, which is usually Eaglin, but it can also be a barrier statue if you already have a way to get to Eaglin. This is the card you usually need in your hand the most, so use all of your draw power and searching to get to it if possible. Then you run your 3 Eaglin because, despite not being a full combo by itself, it can work sometimes if you have the right hand, and frees up Robina's search for extenders or a stronger end board if you already have it, so it's usually worth it at 3. Then 2 Stritch because it's a fairly useful extender, but not something you really want to start with most of the time. Having 2 gives you more targets for Mysterious Maps effect, and having it in rotation allows you to use it as a pseudo DD Crow on your opponent's turn, or as a way to banish stuff from your graveyard to then allow Tokan to add them back to your hand. So I think 2's the right number, but you can try it at 1 if you need to fit something else in instead. Then Tokan's the most niche of the low-level Fluas, so you only run it at 1. Again, it's full combo if you have Tokan and the Field Spell, since it can use its own effect to return to the hand a card you banished with the Field Spell's effect, giving you the extra normal summon of Robina and allowing you to continue on from there. Also, it allows you to recycle your Floowandereeze traps if you banish them first with Stritch or their own effects. So if you're forced into a longer grind game, it can be useful. You can also banish one of your Flua spell or traps with the Field Spell, and then immediately retrieve it with Tokan, so that's another good use to keep in mind. Finally, you don't really need to use more than 1 M-Pen, since the Flua cards are fairly recyclable, and it's usually just there to be a turn 1 Floodgate and to search Dreaming Town. For their back row you run 3 Magnificent Map, 1 Dreaming Town, 1 Scary Sea, and 2 Unexplored Winds. The Field Spell map is an amazing card to draw, giving you both a search and an extra normal summon, while also allowing you to play more during your opponent's turn. Having it in your hand will usually mean that you're able to end on an extra problem on your field for your opponent, like an extra barrier statue on top of the usual N-Pen combo. Dreaming Town is the main card you search with N-Pen, since unlike the map, it lets you choose when you want to start playing during your opponent's turn. This usually leads to Visor being summoned, which is a powerful form of disruption. Plus, you can immediately chain the second effect of this card to banish itself, giving you an ultimate Conductor Tyranno-like effect to flip everything they control face down. You only really need one, since it's fairly easy to recycle with Tokan, and if you do recycle it, it's a good way to get Apex Avian back on the field, even during the same turn that it's already negated something. Scary Sea is only ran at 1 because it's usually a worse choice than Dreaming Town, but it's very searchable if you do decide that it's the right call. Basically, if you know what you're going up against, and you know that this card will stop the deck dead in its tracks, go for this, but otherwise stick to the regular combo. Unexplored Winds is a great card to draw going second, and an okay card to draw going first. Choosing the correct ratio of this is always difficult, since it's usually nice to start with it, but not always, and it's also fairly searchable, so running 3 seems a bit overkill. Honestly, you could make an argument for running this at 1 or at 3 as well, so it's really up to you to see how helpful you find this card. It's especially useful against decks with hard to out boss monsters, since this deck struggles against untargetable, indestructible monsters like Dragoon. If you're encountering these a lot, for example in your locals, boost this card up to 3. The second effect can occasionally unbrick you if you draw 2 high level winged beasts too, so that's a nice bonus. Next are your other winged beasts, Apex Avian, Visor, and Stormwinds. Apex Avian is an Omni-Negate, and since it's once per chain and returns itself to the hand as cost, you can sometimes just summon it back with Dreaming Town or your field spell. That's an especially good combo if you have an Unknown Wind on the field, since you'll need less tributes, and it'll be picking apart your opponent's board with each summon. Visor is a strong interruption, and can also be used to force your opponent to draw into something very suboptimal by stacking their deck with a card from their field or graveyard. It can also help you by recycling cards from your graveyard, so if you wanted something back like a Nadir Servant or a barrier statue that got destroyed, you can do so thanks to this card. It can also bounce itself back immediately on summon, letting you repeatedly get this effect off. Finally, Stormwinds is your search off of Robina if you already have Eaglin, making it a bit harder for your opponent to play. It will be summoned in attack mode, which isn't the best, but usually your traps will be enough to deal with their normal summon. Next is the Dogmatika package of 3 Ecclesia, 3 Nadir Servant, and 2 Punishment. Either draw Ecclesia or search her with Nadir, and then summon her off of N-Pen's effect, which isn't locked to winged beasts, to get a Punishment. It's a nice bit of advantage and interruption, allowing the deck to not quite be so reliant on floodgates to win. For consistency, Terraforming searches the map, and Gold Sarcophagus banishes a low-level Flua so that it can add itself back when you summon another one. And then Duality lets you excavate 3 with no downside in this deck. Then, as hand trap protection, you run 3 Book of Moon and a Call by the Grave. With Book letting you dodge effect failure or impermanence's effect by flipping your own monster face down, which doesn't actually hinder your combo at all, but it also doubles as interruption if you didn't need it. Finally, run 3 impermanence as a good hand trap and additional back row. Now, while this deck doesn't really use its extra deck in the traditional way, between Nadir Servant and Punishment being able to send cards straight from your extra deck to the graveyard, you can still get some good use out of these cards. Entis is the obvious one, destroying a card when it's sent, and then Skull Knight can destroy a monster but doesn't need to be activated immediately. Wind Pegasus provides some non-targeting removal if one of your cards is destroyed, so that can be a good one to send while going first for even more interruptions. Amiga can recycle a banished card, and a Toad can add a Robina back to the hand if it somehow ends up in the graveyard. Shirag can search any of the Fluas as long as you have another one that's been banished, and the Ferrogites allow you to try and fix your hand by drawing something and then shuffling something else back. Finally, Ultimate Dragon is there just to make sure that you always have something with a high enough attack for Punishment's requirement. So that's what I think is probably the best version of this deck. but I'm going to give you some options anyway, just to let you customize your list a bit. First off, and perhaps most obviously, is Prosperity. It's basically Duality, but better. At the cost of your extra deck cards, that really won't matter 99% of the time. If you have them, run them, but I wanted to keep the price of the deck down a bit, so I opted out of them. Then there's Crossout Designator. Again, this was a price concern, but since this deck is quite weak to hand traps at certain parts of the combo, it could definitely be worth running this. If you want to see a full price build of this deck with Crossout and Prosperity, head on over to my Patreon, where you can get this deck and the other versions of it. Then there's Snarl and Dark Simorgh. It might seem tempting to run Snarl, just because it's part of the archetype and everything, but its effects just aren't actually very good, and Dreaming Town is usually just better than what this card offers. You can try it if you want though, especially if you think Riser is a bit too expensive. Dark Simorgh is a great side deck card since it can just shut down back row decks completely by preventing them from setting cards. Then there's Harpy Harpist, who can be an alternative search target for Robina. When summoned, you return a winged beast to the hand to return an opponent's monster to the hand as well. So this can be good for bouncing your opponent's normal summon back if you get the field spell's effect to summon on their turn. Finally, you might be wondering where Dimension Shifter is. The thing is, it actually stops Nadir Servant from working, as well as Dogmatika Punishment, so it's hard to recommend in this version. It's maybe worth it as a side deck card though, if you're going against a deck that just loses completely to this card. So that's the deck. Now let's look at some combos that you can do with it. If you've been enjoying the video so far, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. You'll also get to see the updated version of the deck with Battle of Chaos if you do that, so make sure to stick around. In this first hand, I'm going to show you what you can do if you have a Robina and an Ecclesia. You can also search Robina with any of its cards, or get to Ecclesia through Nadir Servant, so it's not too precise of a combo. First, start by normal summoning Robina, he'll search Eaglin, and then normal summon that. That searches your M-Pen, who is also normal summoned, and gives you an extra normal summon and a search of a back row. The two small birds add themselves back to the hand, and now you have a City of Dreams. M-Pen then allows you to summon Ecclesia, who searches Dogmatika Punishment, and then you have a set Dreaming Town so that you can start normal summoning on your opponent's turn. Now during their main phase, you can use Sleeping Town to normal summon Robina. You can search a Stritch now to act as a DD Crow, and then it summons Eaglin, he'll search Riser. Stritch is just extra, but it gets you another normal summon, which will summon Riser the Mega Monarch, who will be able to return cards to your opponent's deck or hand. Now this is a combo if you have Robina and Eaglin in your hand, but it also works with Robina and the Map Field spell. Start by normal summoning Robina. You can now, instead of searching Eaglin, search the Barrier statue. Eaglin searches M-Pen as usual, who you tribute summon to search City of Dreams. Then with its extra normal summon, you get to summon a Barrier statue of Stormwind, and still set Dreaming Town so that you can summon a Riser during their turn. This third hand shows you what kind of hand you need in order to make 2 tribute summons while going first. Start by using the field spell to banish an Eaglin, while summoning Robina, who searches a Tokan. Then Eaglin gets to search M-Pen, who you tribute summon, while adding the 2 small birds back, and searching a Dreaming Town. Then M-Pen summons Token, who can banish your Eaglin to give you another normal summon of Eaglin. And now, since you've been using the field spell's normal summon chain until now, you haven't used your basic normal summon, so you can tribute both of them for something like an Apex Avian. You then still have a set Dreaming Town and a Robina in your hand so that you can still get a Riser during your opponent's turn. Finally, here's a few test hands. This hand has the field spell and Robina in it, so you'll have a ton of choices with what you can do in your combos. Starting with the map, you can banish Stritch to then summon Robina, and Stritch's effect will add it back to your hand. Eaglin then searches M-Pen, who searches Dreaming Town and summons Tokan, getting an extra normal summon by returning Eaglin to the hand. After summoning Eaglin, use your normal summon on the Barrier statue and then set the trap. During your opponent's turn, you'll now not only be able to summon Riser to cause disruption, but you'll also have the zones and materials necessary to search and then tribute summon Apex Avian, while flipping everything your opponent controls face down. In this hand we have Tokan and the map, which is still full combo. Duality hits an Ecclesia, so we'll be able to finish off the combo as that. Using the map to banish Robina, we can now combo as usual, using Eaglen to search M-Pen, giving you an extra normal summon for Ecclesia, we'll then search your Dogmatika Punishment. You now end your turn with not only the setup for Riser on your opponent's turn, but also Punishment's Destruction, called by the grave to banish something, and Book of Moon which you can use offensively as well, all backed up by M-Pen's Floodgate for attack position special summoned monsters. Now this time we have 2 maps, which isn't great, but the rest of the hand makes up for it. We start off with Tokan into Robina, searching Eaglen to then search and summon M-Pen. With your extra normal summons, you can get 2 more materials on the board, and use your normal summon to get out Apex Avian. Now when you negate something with Apex Avian, it will return itself to the hand, only for you to be able to summon it back again with the field spell's effect, or Dreaming Town, sending an opponent's card to the graveyard every time thanks to Unexplored Wind's effect. It's a bit harder to pull off, but a board like this can actually sometimes be stronger than the usual Visor one, since each negate is backed up by an opponent losing even more cards thanks to them being tributed away, and at some point you'll also be flipping everything face down thanks to the Trap's Graveyard effect. So that's the video. What did you think? Are you as excited for Floowandereeze as I am? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, make sure to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching!